Why do I watch so many crappy movies? Woo! Why do I watch anything cheesy from the 80s that's horror? Woo! Why is Batista making better movies than The Rock? Woo! Chuckalove, another episode, 1,200 films. 1,200 films is going to be really tough to get to. If I do 2 movies per day on days I work, 5 movies on my off day, then another 50 movies on my vacation, it still puts me about 60 short of 1,200. I'll get the record. That's the important thing, but I got to pull 60 movies out of my butt somehow, and I don't know if I can do that. But I was looking at the lady that has the record, and I noticed how in the last few months she barely watched any films. And she could have murdered this record. She could have put it completely out of orbit. And now I understand why. She was probably losing her mind. Because I'm starting to relate. I was like, gosh, sometimes it's a chore. And you've already watched 3 or 4 movies that day, and you're like, gosh, I really need to watch another. I don't want to. I want to watch something else. I want to hear a podcast. I want to explore YouTube for hours and then get lost and end up in weird places. But you can't. You got to stay focused. You got to stay on course until mission accomplished. But let's get going on the list. Starting at 601. 601 was Keep Watching. This was a horror film. This was where they would put cameras, this group of killers, they would put cameras in the house to watch you, so when they invade the house and kill you off one by one, it can be broadcasted on the internet. Yeah. So kind of similar films have been done, but not quite like this. But in Carl from The Walking Dead, he popped up. He's in this if you want to see him. But yeah, it was fine, I guess. This is exactly what you expect. Exactly what I expected. 602, Approaching the Unknown. This was a decent little sci-fi entry. This guy is on this little one-man ship. He's going to Mars. And I guess he's going to live there to start building a space station. And about 2/3 of the way there, these things start going wrong, and he loses communication, and then he starts going crazy, and he kind of shuts down mentally. It's not as good as the Matt Damon movie, but it's fine. If you're hard up for a science fiction. 603, The Curse 2, The Bite. One of the reviewers for this said this film is underrated. It's not underrated. It's not good. This guy and this newlywed couple, I guess, and the guy gets bit by a snake and slowly turns into a snake. It seems like we've already discussed this film in this countdown. I believe it was February where I discussed the movie where the guy got bit by a snake and turned into a snake. And that's what happens here, basically. And, yeah, he just thinks, he slowly starts turning into a snake and starts attacking his wife, and the cops have to get involved, and it had one of the guys from MASH, the cross-dresser guy, I can't remember his name. But, I wonder if he's still alive. I don't know. I should look into that. But he was the cop that was investigating this. But yeah, nothing special. 604, Solstice. This group of friends go down south in the bayou to hang out to watch the summer solstice, or to hang out during that. And apparently, a couple of them had a history of something bad they did, and they're being haunted by it. And yeah, I know. So the ghost of the past starts haunting them until they reveals what they did, and yeah, these horror films, god damn. I know 20 minutes in, okay, this is, oh, yeah, it's one of these. Oh, they're going to visit their redneck relatives. Oh, yeah, this is gonna, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, she found the old wedding dress of the dead grandma. Oh, yeah, that's what's, I'd give anything for an original horror film. Does that exist anymore? 6:05, The Man with the Golden Gun. I'm back on my James Bond. And this movie was excellent. Christopher Lee played the bad guy and did an excellent job. Finally warming up after Roger Moore. The first one I watched, I can't remember the name of it. Whatever the first one he did was not great, and this one was really good. A lot of James Bond, little, misadventures, I guess. It was a little hokey, a little corny at parts, but that's James Bond. That's fine. I'm not too crazy about the long 5 to 6 minute musical intros of the ladies shadow dancing or whatever, but whatever. 6:06, Escape Plan 2, Hades, starring Sylvester Stallone and Batista and 50 Cent. I have to tell you the story now since I've met 50 Cent. I was at the 2009 Royal Rumble in Joe Louis Arena, and during the Mighty Slow women's match, we decided, let's go get something to eat before the big matches start happening. So we did what we did. So we went to the little nacho place was up and running, and it had 2 little lines. And so I'm waiting in line, and then the other lane was this short little black guy, and who had a big coat and kind of kept himself. And then there was this Mexican guy in front of me. He started getting awfully antsy, and I thought, oh God, there's going to be some kind of fight or something. I was like, oh great. Then he turns around, hands me his cell phone, and says, can you take a picture with me and the black guy over here? So he goes to stand by the little black guy, and the black guy looks up, and then it's 50 Cent. Couldn't believe it. So I said, okay, click, here you go. So yeah, that was my experience of taking a picture of 50 Cent in the line for nachos at the Royal Rumble in Joe Louis Arena in Detroit. So you never know. But anyway, back to the movie. One of the guys that Stallone fired in the movie goes off and joins this group to make this unbeatable, unbreakable prison where you can never ever escape. And so they put in Stallone and his buddies and a couple others, and Stallone's got to figure out how to get out. And it goes from there. Batista was enjoyable, as usual. A little bit more involved in his worthless role in that goddamn Blade Runner movie, but, whatever. But yeah, it was fine. If you like the first one, you'll like this one. 6:07, The Ritual. This was supposed to be part of the Tales from the Crypt series. Remember, there was a couple of those movies in the late 90s, I guess, mid-90s. And after Bordello of Blood bombed, they said, let's not do any more Tales from the Crypt. So they kind of took the Tales from the Crypt title off this movie and just released it. Well, if Bordello of Blood hadn't killed it, this movie would have, because this was just as bad, if not worse. This chick, she's going down south to, where the hell was she going? Somewhere in Africa or Central America, I don't remember, but they had a lot of voodoo, and as soon as she got there, they're trying to put curses on her and make her life miserable, and people are having hallucinations, and she's there to take care of some guy who's wealthy, but he's losing his mind because he's got a curse on him. It's such a disaster. God. It just didn't go anywhere. It was just more of the same again and again. 6:08, The Sound. I got excited when I saw Christopher Lloyd was in this. He was listed as the co-star, but it's barely a cameo. This chick is going underground to the subway that have been abandoned because apparently there's ghosts down there, and she wants to debunk it. And she's hearing these noises, and she's experiencing stuff and kind of saying, well, it was this or that. It wasn't paranormal. And then she bumps into Christopher Lloyd down there, who's replacing a light bulb, and Christopher Lloyd's like, I never knew anyone came down here. And so he talks to the girl for a while, then he disappears, and that's the last to see of him. And then the girl continues on with her little experiment, and then it's over, and then that's it. That's film. So you don't need to watch it. The Sound. Avoid. 609, we're going way back to to Alfred Hitchcock with The Birds. I had remembered seeing bits and pieces of this when I was really, really little, but I didn't really sit down and watch it. So now I sat down and watched it. I did not know the lead female was a very young Jessica Tandy. Wow. Completely unrecognizable. I only remember her from the Cocoon movies in the 80s, and she was 1,000 years old then. But yep, she was the young female lead in this, and she's chasing down this guy she's after that they bumped into each other in the pet store. So she's kind of a stalker in this, really. She broke into the guy's house and left the bird in there. And, like, that's kind of creepy. That's not normal. It's not regular behavior. But anyway, she's flirting with this doctor, and they become, whatever. And then the birds start attacking, and then the birds ruin the birthday party, and then the birds sneak in the chimney, and then et cetera, et cetera. But it was fine. That's what you'd expect out of Alfred Hitchcock. 610, The Tripper. Oh boy. Where do I begin with this? This movie had 1 billion people, but it was a B movie, but it was still passable. This had Jay of Jay and Silent Bob. This had Thomas Jane. This had Pee Wee Herman. This had Rick Overton, who I fondly remember as the taller of the two brownies from the movie Willow. But The Tripper is about this killer in the woods who wears this Ronald Reagan mask and quotes Ronald Reagan as he's killing you. As you remember, Ronald Reagan was called the Gipper from one of his movie roles, so this guy is called the Tripper. Haha. Apparently the Tripper was just an escaped person from a mental home. I guess during the 80s Reagan released a bunch of them, and this guy, so he idolized Reagan for releasing him, so he started killing in his name. So yeah, that's what it is. 611, Cry Freedom. Rotten Tomatoes had put out a list of Denzel's best movies, worst to best. I can't believe John Q was the worst. I liked that movie. I thought it was fine. So I looked down the list for some ideas, some stuff I haven't seen, and I saw Cry Freedom. So I said, well, let's put it to the list and watch it when it comes in. So I watched it. It's about apartheid in South Africa, and he plays I think his name's Stephen Biko, and he's teaming up with Kevin Kline. I can't remember his name in the movie, but he was a journalist or something, and trying to erase apartheid and to make it so it's fair, because what they did to these black people, they basically is just glorified segregation all over again, and they were trying to delete that because it was getting a little out of hand. But that's basically their journey and how much opposition they were facing as they were trying to do this. But it was fine. It was listed in Denzel's top 10. I don't know if I'd put it in his top 10. But it was fine. Denzel's not really in it this much, though. It's not really a Denzel movie. It's more like a Kevin Kline with so-and-so, so-and-so, and Denzel. You know what I mean? But, yep, it's fine. 612, The Spy Who Loved Me. Another Bond movie where we got to see the debut of super unbeatable bad villain Jaws, who is a actor named Richard Kiel, who just recently passed away, I believe, just a few years ago. He was the heckler from the Billy Madison movie, The Giant Heckler. And it was weird to see him in this because he was so young and he was so agile. He was just get thrown around and bouncing around, but yeah, he played Jaws, and he was always around every corner trying to stop Bond, and he could never quite do it. But the main villain was some underwater dude who wanted to, do bad things. And I got to play a snippet from the main title.
Nobody does it better. Makes me feel sad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you.
Yeah, that was the main title song. That was the lead track for the movie. I never knew that. I'm learning new things. I just figured that was a cheesy, sappy love song. I didn't know it was from Bond. It's like, wow. But where was I? Yeah, there was another super agent that Bond fell in love with, and it was a fine little film. Not Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore. That's what the movie Richard Kiel was in. I apologize. Not as good as The Man with the Golden Gun, but it was a nice little movie. Then I got a taste of Jaws, so I wanted some more Jaws. So I watched Moonraker because I heard Jaws, the villain, was in it. Moonraker had its moments. Some people said it was garbage, but I didn't. I can see why, but it wasn't. As you can see, I'm torn. Bond has to go in space because this dude has his shuttles going into space, and he's got to stop him. And of course, Jaws is around, and eventually Jaws gets bad-mouthed and flips sides, which is, I don't know, different, but. It was okay. Not the best, not the worst Bond movie. 614, Playdate. Oh. This family moves into this new house, and the neighbors are weird. If the neighbors are weird, you leave them alone. No. These people have to kind of keep butting in, and eventually the neighbors end up being killers, so they start killing off the family, and after they kill the dog, and it just gets weird. But yeah, just leave the family alone. 615, I broke a promise. I said in episode 1 I was not going to watch films I had already seen, but it was kind of a string of mediocrity, so I needed something familiar. I need comfort. I needed to go home. So I watched The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love this movie so much. This movie's got so many quotable lines. You do. Now I do. You must be very proud. You're the asshole on TV. Yeah, there's so many great lines, and Richard Dawson was so great as the bad guy. It's too bad he didn't get more roles after that. Look at that mother run. Kurt Fuller, underrated Kurt Fuller, was in a small role, and Jesse Ventura was the old washed-up stalker. Yeah. Anyway, movies. I'm sure everyone in the world has seen this. But the cool thing was when I watched it, I saw that it started in the year 2017, and then it fast forwarded 18 months later when they were in the little prison. I was like, that's right now. That's like right now. That's this minute. That's so cool. We finally caught up to Running Man. But yeah, it's in the future, and there's this crazy game show where they put in killers and have these pro wrestling like stalkers go after them and kill them, and it's treated like a game show. It's treated like, like Richard Dawson. It's like Family Feud. It's this family fun. And people are gambling on which stalker's going to kill the convicts or whatever. And good times. I needed that though to get me through. 6:16 Stop Loss. This was a Ryan Philippe Channing Tatum movie. Ryan Philippe was a sergeant, and he had this troop of people in Iraq, and they had finished their tour, and they come home, and Ryan Philippe, he was done. He said that was his last tour that he agreed to do, so he thought he was done, and nope, there's this thing called stop loss where no matter what you think you're going to do, you're going back. So he said, F that. I'm taking off. I'm running away. And I don't blame him. But, so that's basically what this movie is. He's trying to contact this senator, this U.S. senator that he met once at a parade to help him out. And the senator's like, you're on your own, buddy. You got to go back. And Channing Tatum's his buddy, and he's trying to, tell him, you can't do anything. You got to go back. You're just going to be running away forever. Interesting movie. Also had what's his jobber's name? Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Joseph Gordon-Levitt made a string of really good movies for about 10 years, and like, what has he done lately? It's like he just stopped. Like Brick, and there's a bunch of other movies. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but 500 Days of Summer was fine. 50-50 was fine. And yeah, he did a bunch of really good movies, and then he just stopped. He did that bicycling movie with Michael Shannon, and after that, nothing. Just, I don't know if his movies were losing money. And anyway, moving on. But yeah, it's a good movie. Stop Loss. 6:17. We're going way back to the 70s for Al Pacino. And Justice for All. This he was a kind of a small-time lawyer, and there was this judge that he hated with a passion, and every time Pacino would try to reason with this judge, and in court or out of court, wherever, the judge would just treat him like garbage. And then eventually the judge needed his help because he was facing a rape charge, and Al Pacino was the only lawyer that would touch it, so he took him on, even though he hated this guy. And then he finds out that the judge is completely 1,000% guilty, and is at a quandary. Do you do the right thing as a lawyer and defend him? Or do you say, yep, he's guilty, hang him up? So that's basically what this movie was about. But it was really interesting. 6:18, The Canyon. This newlywed couple decide, let's go to the Grand Canyon illegally when they're not doing tours, and pay this creepy dude to give us a tour. And that's what happens. And then the guide, he doesn't make it long, and he dies. And so they're in the middle of the Grand Canyon by themselves, not knowing where to go, what to do. And they have a 127 hours moment where they have to slice off some limbs because, got crushed by boulders. And you don't realize how vast the Grand Canyon is until you're at the bottom of it. Until you're looking up and like, oh gosh, this isn't a little nothing. This is a big something. But he had a real creepy, not creepy, but oh shucks ending, which made it okay. It's an okay film if you're, I think it's on Amazon Prime. If you stumble across it, it's fine. 619 Beirut. This had I can't remember his damn name. The dude from Mad Men, whatever the hell his main guy. He's in Beirut, living in Beirut. He has this nice wife, and he's got these kids. They aren't his kids. They're like adopted, that he rescued, sort of. He doesn't have full custody yet, but he's working on it. And then all of a sudden there's this terrorist attack, and the wife dies, and then the kids disappear and are kidnapped, and so he's like, screw this, I'm getting out of here, and he starts a new life. Doesn't leave the country, he just leaves the town, and then he's a salesman or something, and then he gets offered this big money to go back to Beirut to do a speaking engagement, and it was a lot more than he usually gets for a speaking engagement, so that should have been a red flag. And of course, as soon as he gets back there, everything bubbles up again, and he's back in the middle of it, and the kid that was kidnapped years ago pops up, and he's part of the freedom fighters. And this movie was kind of like being at an amusement park. It was like a roller coaster for 2 minutes. It was like 2 minutes of craziness, and then you get off, and you're like, ah. And then you get back in line and for another one, and then you're on the roller coaster and it goes crazy again, and ah. And then you get off and it's slow, and you're like, ah. That's how this movie was. It was crazy for spurts at the time, and then it would stop and slow down. Then all of a sudden, boom, a big explosion, and it was okay though. 620 Invaders from Mars. This was a remake of an older film. The original, the little boy sees these invaders, these aliens, fall in his backyard. Is like, oh gosh, it's another curse, but it wasn't, thank God. But anyway, he's trying to tell his mom and dad, and they don't really believe him. So the next morning at breakfast, he's still insistent that these are the aliens in his backyard, and so the dad goes, checks it out, and he comes back a little different. And the kid can tell, that's not my dad. That dad, he's weird. And his dad's asking him to do weird things, and then he goes to school, and he realizes some of the teachers aren't the same either. So he's figuring out pretty quick that aliens have done something to these people. Then gradually the whole town's kind of, altered. So he's kind of one against a million, trying to figure out what to do against these aliens. And yeah, fun little 80s movie for once. Wasn't dumb or corny. It was actually interesting. But yeah. 621 The Forgiven. This kind of goes right along with that Cry Freedom movie earlier about South African apartheid. This was post-apartheid. It was kind of during the healing process. And Forrest Whitaker played a priest in this council who was trying to figure out, how do we mend the wounds. And Eric Bana was this prisoner, and he was still very angry. And why Forrest Whitaker kept trying to convince him to, that it's over with. You got to join up with us and be on our side. And Eric Bana, for whatever reason, just refused to. He just wanted to be a dick and hang out in prison. You should just let him do that. But Forrest Whitaker wouldn't leave him alone, and yada yada yada. This movie was a little slow going at times, but if you're into that period of history, then go for it. Check it out. Where were we? 622 Dying Breed. It starts off way back when this, I think this was in Australia. This serial killer escapes this prison, and basically he starts this own group of inbred people in this little section of the country, and tourists go to visit it and they don't come back because the inbred people run the town and they kill them. So it picks up with this young group of people going and visiting this town and experiencing trouble immediately, which should have been a red flag. But no, they hanging out and said, well, what's going on? A lot of inbred people, a lot of weird people around here. These horror movies, goddamn. 623 Slaughter. This movie wasn't much till the ending. This girl, this young woman, befriends this other young woman, and they decide to go hang out at a house that one of their relatives own that they never really use, and right immediately next door is the slaughterhouse where they kill pigs. And then then slowly but surely you realize there's a deeper story going on with one of the girls in that slaughterhouse. There was a little secret room where bad things would happen to the little girl back when. So eventually things build up, and yeah, she goes crazy. But yeah, it was okay though. Just took a while to get going. 624, this is the Rock's movie, The Rampage. He plays this gorilla trainer. He taught this big giant albino gorilla sign language, and he has his students out there in the middle of the gorillas, which seems dangerous, especially with no weapons. But and then this experimental stuff from space lands and makes all these animals gigantic, and they're beaconed to the city and start destroying it. I remember the video game. This video game wasn't much. It was pretty basic, but whatever. It was what it was. Rock's movies always seem to have a lot of buildings crumbling. You notice that? A lot of things, yeah. But it's mindless fun. 625, From Within. This movie is basically exactly like It Follows, with the demon jumping from person to person, and then makes him do something bad, then it dies, it kills the person, and then it jumps from that person to the next person. But it came out years before It Follows, so did It Follows rip this off? I don't know. And it was weird to see Richard Jenkins in this. If you don't know Richard Jenkins, if you look him up, you'll recognize him immediately. He's an Oscar-nominated actor who's surprised he did this, but I guess this was about 10 years ago, so maybe he just needed the work. But, yep, that's it. Oh, God, what's coming? I can tell you what I've already watched for the next batch. Chappaquiddick. This weird Dennis Hopper movie called Backtrack. And that's all I know of, so we'll discuss that next time.